Hard times suck. Losing family, friends, money, a future you look forward to is unbearable. But we all know God's not going to give us things we can't handle, and believe me, I'm living that firsthand. I've lost a girlfriend, I've lost family, I've lost friends, I've lost money, I've lost a future, and all in the pursuit of education that I don't even want to pursue anymore. I have no idea who I am and who I'm going to be, but the truth is that I'm always going to have God, and so by the end of this video, you are going to understand how to be happy in moments of difficulty, moments of tribulation, and how to keep peace knowing that it's all going to work out. And so I start us in Galatians 6:9, where the Lord says, "Let us not become weary in doing good." So don't stop doing good. Continue working hard. Continue being a good soul, helping people, not becoming bitter, because at a proper time, you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. That doesn't mean you're going to get this harvest tomorrow. I'm not going to tell you in 3 days it's going to, come together. It might be months, it might be years, but you can't give up. And this isn't like a gambler. This isn't like you're at a casino and you might win all of a sudden, because the odds are in your favor. We all know if you do really good at basketball, you might get into the NBA if you don't give up. We all know if you get really good in school, you'll get good grades if you don't give up. And so it's stacked in your favor because you have God, and God wants you to be at peace. And peace might be rent that is paid for, a family you can share with a beautiful woman, and ultimately going into heaven and sharing that with Him by being appreciative for His blessing. But you can't be appreciative if you have nothing lack thereof initially. And so you need to understand you reap what you sow. That is, if you work hard, you're going to get good things that was worthy of your work. And so continue to do good. And understand that doing good isn't just working hard. It's not just going to the gym. It's not just building an imaginary business. Working hard and doing good is being nice to people, being the representative of a good Christian, working hard in your faith, having Bible studies, being in Bible studies, doing whatever you can to be a good person, not because you want this reward, but because that is truly, humbly, what a good person is. And we continue, and this is, reinforced in Hebrews 10:35-36. God tells us to focus in on our faith, right? Based on the NIV translation I have here. So do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what He has promised. And so this implies that we are doing the will of God. Maybe that's a business you're working on. Maybe that's a family you want to start. Whatever it is, whatever dreams you have. I know you probably have them because I have them too. And so you need to realize this is for the will of God if it is good. And you will receive what God has promised, which is heaven. Which certainly that might not be rent paid, but that is infinitely better if you take 5 minutes to think about it. Nevertheless, it tells us initially to not throw away your confidence because you will be richly rewarded. So focus on God. In being good, you need to focus on God. Attend church. Be happy in church. Don't pretend to be happy because you hate your life and you want to put a smile on your face, but find appreciation in things. Science proves you can't be upset or frustrated when you're equally appreciative, right? It's impossible for your brain to be largely upset about certain scenarios when you're grateful, right? You can't be upset about a loss of a life when you're grateful for the life that they gave to you. And it's a bit of a dichotomy here because equally we want to be grateful and equally we want to be sorrowful, which is fair. But understand in those moments when you're struggling to be happy, a good quick fix is to just be grateful. And this teaches us to not throw away our confidence. Be grateful and be eager because work hard. Confidence isn't sitting there and knowing it's all going to be okay without doing anything. Confidence is sitting there and doing everything in your power to achieve your goals. You can be a millionaire. You can be a beautiful man for a beautiful woman. You can be a pastor. You can be a plumber. You can do anything you want in life if you glorify God and if you work hard. And so in tribulations, that's not punishment as much as it feels like. It's more so a reward because it tells you you are on the right path. If it takes an hour to write a math test and you get 100%, you have to write that 1 hour of math test. You have to study for it. Studying feels like punishment. That 1 hour of math test is stressful and so you feel punished. But you were rewarded, weren't you? And so the whole thing, the whole practice was a reward. And you must focus on God and the promise He delivers for you. Additionally, we find in 1 Peter verses 5:10, right, chapter 5, verse 10, we understand that God is going to restore what we lose, right? We are encouraged to face persecution because whatever we face is going to be restored. We understand, we see in the martyrs for Christianity, they are killed and they're given everlasting life in heaven. We understand that, for example, let's say you lose a girlfriend. I have. It's not fun, especially when you do everything to be better for them, right? Like becoming a kickboxer, like learning languages, like making YouTube videos, becoming a better man of God. It sucks. But first of all, you become a better man. And sorry, I had a hair in my mouth. And second of all, you're going to be given something that's better. Maybe you lost a girlfriend that you held close to you, but she was a harlot. She just wanted sex, and maybe you felt satisfied because of that. But Lord knows you shouldn't be doing those things. You shouldn't be having sex before marriage. You shouldn't be in relationships that glorify sexual immorality. And so what does he do? Well, he takes you away, lets you get beat up a little bit, thrown around so that way you can toughen up and become a better man, more deserving of what's good. Because remember, God doesn't want you with a girlfriend who's just going to have sex with you. He wants you with a good woman. But a good woman deserves a good man. And so he's going to beat you up or allow you to be beat up. Obviously, God's not going to give you hard times. He's going to allow hard times to happen, right? And so you can be better. So you can have the charisma. So you can have the body, the mind, most importantly, the spirit. So you can be hardworking. So you can be smart. Like, good men are smart. But you only get that through being an idiot at one point. I couldn't read until I was way older. I'm illiterate. Now I have 2 Bibles. I got books I'm reading. I'm literally studying Atomic Habits. And so, you need to, lose things at some point. And I'm jealous for sometimes when people go through hard times because I understand their life is going to be accelerated because of those hard times. Point is, he's going to restore it. Because after you lose that girlfriend, you know what you're going to get? After the hard times, a godly woman. That's not a promise from me. That's assurance from God. Because he knows you want a girlfriend. So he's going to give you a woman of God. He's going to give you a wife. He's going to give you a family. He's going to give you lineage. Way better than any amount of silly sex you can get with some harlot. Right? He wants you to be happy with a woman of God. And you know that's infinitely better. And thus you must go through hard times. Point is, though, God's going to restore what you lose. You spend money trying to work on something and you fail. You learn how to make money. And you make so much more. Again, I can't stress this enough. Losing things suck. But you lose everything for the sake of gaining more. Maybe that's friendships. Losing friendships suck. I've lost probably more than I can count, which is pretty embarrassing to say. But I know I'll create better ones in the future. Long-lasting friendships that make me a better man. Because I know what good friends look like. I know what habits they should have. They shouldn't be drinking. They shouldn't be smoking. They should be worshiping God and aspiring to be better men. Better men, that is. That's why you're watching this video. You want to find a community of better men. You want to learn. You want to learn to be happy in the hard times. And as we continue, and this is an interesting one, Proverbs 5:3. Lean not on your own understanding, but on God. Lean on God. And this is really confusing because we know we want a reward. We know we want things. We know we're going to be given things. We know we got to work hard for them. But you can't lean on your understanding. Because sometimes we feel like we're being punished. You're not. Sometimes we feel like we're not being punished. You might be. And that's the thing. You can't lean on your understanding. Because if I look at my life story, I failed in school, and then I locked in, and then I turned out really good in school at the end, right? I went from a 34% average to a 95% average. Quite the difference. And I was in a really impressive program too. Big deal, at least for me. And so, if you think about it, younger Nolan, who was failing, probably felt like his life was in shambles. He was depressed and really not enjoying it. He felt like he was being punished. He didn't even know God, but he really felt like he was being punished unfairly. Nolan, coming out of school, realized those hard times allowed him to learn how to study, gave him really good grades, allowed him to understand some really good friendships that helped him out, and ultimately led him to God, because all roads lead to Rome and all tragedy leads to leaning on God. And so understand that you don't need to worry about understanding. And so what do you do instead of understanding? I mean, understanding and rationality is why we exist, right? We want to think about things. We want to pray and think about what we want to pray. We want to think about what's going to happen tomorrow. We want to think about our future. That's why you're always so stressed. And that's why I'm stressed, because what about this family I want? What about the money? What about the kids? What about this woman? What about God? What about church? There's so much to be stressed about, and it's fair. The thing is, though, you're never going to be happy when you're always stressed out about these things, and I live that firsthand. And so understand, you shouldn't understand, which sounds like a paradox, right? How do you understand without understanding? Lean on God. Have faith in God. You're not going to be perfect and never wanting to understand things, especially when God gives you a sense of understanding. You're like, I understand it, but I shouldn't understand. So just focus on having faith in God, which is, it's going to be okay, and what happens tomorrow is tomorrow. What happens yesterday was already done, and what happens today you can do right now. And even in that, there's understanding. So it's really difficult to wrap your head around. It's quite the difficult concept. But just focus on giving God all your faith and all your glory, and don't worry, right? Don't worry. One of the most repeated phrases in the Bible is don't worry. But this is hard to understand, and I don't blame you if you're struggling to appreciate what I'm putting down here, which is, how do you understand not understanding for the sake of understanding, so that way you can have faith in God? Just have faith in God. Have faith that it's going to be okay, and don't try to mold your mind out of situations that are never going to happen. Like, for example, you see a cute girl at the gym and you already imagine you're marrying her. I'm guilty of that, but no amount of trying to picture that is going to bring it into the case, and so don't try to understand something that shouldn't happen. Just be good. And then we continue. 2 verses here, but they're quite similar in how I'm going to describe them. Romans chapter 5, verses 3-4, and James chapter 1, verse 2. So Romans says, not only so, but we also glorify in our sufferings. So we know we glorify God in everything. Paul says that, everything. Everything includes suffering. Well, why is this? Because suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. Why is this so important? Well, when we suffer, we find God. Not because we need him or this and that, but because when you have nothing, you go to God. When you have money, you don't need God, you have money. When you have girls, you don't need God, you have girls. But when you have God, even though it doesn't feel like you really need him, because sometimes you're sitting there you got nothing, you don't feel like anything can be given to you. But what I'm getting at is, when you have nothing, you kind of have everything because you have God, and you're as close to him as you could possibly be. There's no distractions is what I'm getting at. And so not only do you find closeness with God, but you get perseverance because you're going through hard times. You learn how to be more faithful. With your perseverance, Paul states, you build character because you're all of a sudden this man who's persevering. You can get through challenging times. You can get through these really hard, grueling moments where you're forced to continue working again and again and again. And when you become a man who works hard, you understand the fruits of your labor and what comes of hard work, and so you build hope. If you have no idea what hard work does, then how can you be hopeful because you have no idea what's on the other side of the tunnel? But if you've gone through multiple tunnels, multiple caves, and you've come out of, as a result, multiple tunnels and multiple caves, you know what's on the other side. You know there's light at the end of the tunnel. And you know that with your hard work, you're going to achieve your dreams. Maybe that's better grades, maybe that's more money in your pocket, maybe that's a beautiful relationship. Ultimately, that's just to be closer with God. And so not only do we learn from this that the goal is to be closer to God, and with hard times you get closer to God, but you are built as an individual. You are built. Maybe you're being built to learn how to make more money. Maybe you're being built to find that relationship. Maybe you're being built physically or mentally. Point is, though, you're being built and being made good. And then we learn in James, right? James says, have joy in suffering, right? Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds. Why? Well, not because he wants you to, just be an idiot who's super happy when you're struggling, right? If your family dies, well, that's horrible. It's hard to be happy. But be joyful because it's going to bring you closer to God. That's the best thing. The best thing to bring you closer to God is to suffer. Because when you suffer, there's less distraction, which sounds like an oxymoron. When you're so busy suffering, how is there no distraction? Well, if you lose someone, that's suffrage. But you're all of a sudden no longer distracted by them. And you're all of a sudden focused on trying to be happier. You know what makes you happier when nothing else can? God. You know what fills you when you're empty? God. And that's when you realize, when you're no longer so focused, or at least not necessarily focused, but comforted by other things. Like when you're laying in bed, you're not worried about school, you're just chilling out in bed. That's when God comes in. And that's why it's so important. So by now you should understand, not only you should be happy because you're going to be promised to be given good things. You're promised to be fruitful, right? You're going to reap beautiful works that you sow if you work hard. You're going to be made a better man for whatever you desire. But enjoy it because primarily you're brought closer to God, which, as much as we like to neglect that point, it is the most important part of human existence, is to grow closer to God. The most important part. I like to give out other examples, but it's not making money. It's not finding women. Those are beautiful things, getting a beautiful relationship and having money to support a family. But ultimately, it's just to be with God. It's all to glorify God. It's all to be with God, right? Paul states, whatever you do, eat or drink, like, do it for the glory of God. Do everything for the glory of God, including your suffering. James states, not only are you going to suffer for God, but you're going to suffer and thus be closer to God. And enjoy being closer to God through your suffering. And finally, one more verse in Romans. I'm going to end with Romans 8:18. So what is this about? Well, Romans 8:18 states that suffering now is nothing compared to the future. Your difficulties, right? Whatever you're suffering presently, as Paul says, is not worth comparing to the glory that will be revealed to us. For little Nolan, that was suffering with getting a 34% average in school, to the glory of having a 95% average and getting a bunch of awards. The suffering for Nolan was losing a beautiful relationship, but the glory is having an amazing one. The suffering we face is death, but the glory is the blood of Christ redeeming us. The glory is that all of our suffering leads to Christ. All roads lead to Rome. And so understand finally that your suffering, biblically proved, right? I'm not like pulling this out of my bum right here, like biblically reinforced. Your suffering is designed to pull you to God and is incomparable. You cannot compare your current suffering to the glory that will be shown to you. So do yourself a favor and help yourself out. Next time you're suffering, be appreciative. Next time you're suffering, suffer for a good reason. Not because you're sitting there like an idiot, not because you're scrolling on your phone, but because you're working hard, right? So many people pray and hope, I was one of them, to suffer so they can learn to be better. Suffer by muscle pain because they went to the gym. Suffer from heartache because they're trying to find the right relationship. Suffering from abuse so they can be hardened and made a better man. Pain brings you closer to God. Pain brings you success. And you can't be grateful otherwise. You can't be hopeful otherwise. And so don't compare your current sufferings to what you're going to get, because what you're going to get is going to infinitely outshine them. Nevertheless, if you think about it psychologically speaking, when you're suffering, you're so focused on the moment and how painful it is. But when you're successful, all of a sudden you forget it. And so promise yourself this. And type this in the comments just to, provide a bit of a standing from where you are and where you want to be. Promise yourself that where you are now and where you're going to be is going to be remembered, such that when you make the money, when you have the relationship, when you're happy, when you're in church, when you find God, and you do all the things you desire, you will remember the points that you suffered. For me, when I'm in church, when I have family, when I'm able to afford things like a roof over my head and food on the table, or clothing for my family and school for my family, when I can afford those things, when I have relationships, when I have God, more of Him, that is, right? Which is the focus. I will remember the younger Nolan, who got that poor grade in school, who struggled with reading, who went through suicide and depression, who went through relationships, who spent every day in isolation. Never forget the sufferings you go through, so you can be ever more appreciative of where you are today and where you will be tomorrow. Nevertheless, I'm Nolan T. Painter. I'm just a kid on the internet, so I'd appreciate if you could help out my journey by sharing this video to someone you think would greatly impact them. And of course, do all the YouTube nonsense, like, subscribe, whatever. And God loves you, of course. I love you, but He loves you infinitely more. Just as is, your reward is infinitely more than whatever you're suffering. Keep on working through it. That's the best advice I could ever give is, I don't understand what you're going through, but just keep on going through it. Because I'm going through something similar, and the best advice I can give is just to keep on going through it, whether I understand what you're going through or not. Of course, I'll see you tomorrow.